Welcome to First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. I'm your host, James Gardner, certified athletic therapist, certified strength and conditioning specialist, yoga instructor, human being. This platform, for the pros, by the pros, anybody in the performance space, and beyond. Welcome here to share in the stories of professionals, experiences, journeys, learning along the way. It's a platform to connect, to network, and to be a part of a community that cares, with conversations that matter, experiences that resonate, and generate ideas, thought-provoking, organic dialogue, passionate prose. Brought to you as always by First Star Therapy, Mobility Tape, Epic, and Benchmark Athletics, in association with the Canadian Athletic Therapists Association. It's First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. Thanks for being here. Thank you for being a part of it. All right, we are live. Welcome to First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy roundtable. We're at session 44, already the last one of October. Becky Swan is our guest tonight. Before we get to her bio, I'll just go through the ground rules. As always, this podcast, Zoomcast, YouTube is brought to you by Mobility Tape, the only heat-activated kinesiology tape on the market, and First Star Therapy. My name is James Gardner. I'll be hosting, and again, our guest this evening, Becky Swan, who is working with the Vancouver Police Department. For the purposes of this, we will be recording. That'll be archived for the podcast for anybody to pick that up, as well as for the YouTube channel. Anybody live, feel free to type in any questions, comments you might have within reason, and I'll be sure to filter those over to Becky as we go through the evening. Towards the end, last 5 or 6 minutes, you can also unmute yourself and feel free to chime in with anything of relevance. And again, it's being recorded for all of those purposes, but also for changing the world one conversation at a time and bringing you all of the things that are happening in the athletic therapy space and the integrative space in the performance realm. Becky Swan is an athletic therapist and strength and conditioning specialist working for the Vancouver Police Department, where she runs the physical health and performance team in the employee wellness unit. Her team provides on-site rehab, injury prevention, physical conditioning, and testing, as well as various wellness initiatives. She started as a fitness coordinator for the VPD in 2010 and quickly recognized that officers could benefit from having access to similar resources as athletes. In 2011, her position changed to the athletic therapist for the department, resulting in on-site therapy services being provided to all members. In 2015, she made a strategic request to move her position from the training and recruiting unit to the human resources unit. The Athletic Therapy and Wellness Unit was created when her position was moved to the Human Resources, and in 2016, the unit saw an addition of a physiotherapist and a fitness coordinator. In late 2019, they joined with a peer support and CISM, the Critical Incident Stress Management Group, to become the Employee Wellness Unit. She has a human kinetics degree from UBC in health and fitness. She went to Sheridan College for athletic therapy, and in 2018 completed her Master's of Rehabilitation Science degree at UBC, focusing on physical wellness for police officers, and completed a study on effective implementation of physical rehab in police departments based on stakeholder perspectives. This is a crucial piece, I think, to understanding what athletic therapy is and what athletic therapy can be. And the last part of this is that Becky supports the growth and development of police officer wellness resources by speaking at various conferences and doing workshops with local clinics and private gyms. She's recently started a side project, and I encourage you to follow this, at Blue Line Vitality, where her goal is to spread awareness and resources on police officer wellness and to connect wellness professionals, officers, and police agencies to support future growth and collaboration. Becky Swan, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being here. I'll let you say hello, and then we got lots to talk about.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me on this. Hopefully I don't go too much into rabbit holes, because once I get going, anyone who knows me, I won't stop unless I'm told to. But I think what you're doing here is great. The community that you're creating around athletic therapy is really needed right now. And it's very exciting to see what you've brought together. So I'm just thrilled to be able to be a part of this.
Thank you. We're thrilled to have you. And we chatted briefly yesterday. And I mean, this is one big rabbit hole. So don't be shy. Let's go down and see where it takes us. You've done a lot and you've done a ton with the Vancouver Police Department. But before we get to that, where did your interest begin in athletic therapy, or when did it begin? If there was a point in time, and then kind of walk us through school, and then we'll transition to where you're at these days.
Sounds good. Yeah, because I think the backstory can give anyone who's listening kind of see where I'm coming from with everything, because it really does build. Sports injuries have been a part of my life pretty much my whole life. So it goes back to when I was 6, and I'll often use this when I do public speaking for goal setting. So I was skiing with my grade 1 teacher. We were active ski family, and I saw her break her leg. And at that point, I got obsessed with injuries, more so with the attention that she got from having a broken leg. And so I let my parents know, like, I want a broken leg. How can I go about this? As luck had it, later on that year, April Fool's Day of all days, I ended up breaking and dislocating my patella. And so when I got out of the hospital, I called her up and said, guess what? I have a bigger cast than you now, right? So that's where the obsession started. So the rehab after that, the crutches and casts, I was glued to them. So that kind of got that seed in there.
Yeah.
And throughout high school, I was active in various different sports. I was a competitive skier, and I knew that I wanted to do something with sports injuries, training, and stuff like that. None of our teachers really knew about athletic therapy or athletic training, but I knew I wanted to do sports injuries, but not medicine. So I went to UBC, starting in human kinetics. And that's when I found out about Sheridan. So finished up my degree there and decided to apply to Sheridan. So I made sure to get all my student training done there. So I got with football, and I played rugby, so I was around it a lot. And I had only really heard about Sheridan and Mount Royal, but what really made me go the Sheridan route was I looked at how much experience can I get in 3 years there versus 1 year at Mount Royal. And I really wanted to work pro football at the time. That was really the big picture in my sight. So Sheridan had the TICAT scholarship. So I figured, well, I'll go there and hope for the best. Yeah. However, in between finishing up UBC and going to Sheridan, I went home and ski instructed for a winter and had to try and figure out what I wanted to do, because anyone who's known me for a long time knows skiing was a big part of my life. I lived, breathed it. I didn't really go to school much in grade 12 because I was skiing all the time. And I essentially left it to fate to decide whether I'd be pursuing professional skiing or I would go on to athletic therapy. And the way I put it out kind of to the universe was, if I get to skip my first year at Sheridan, I'll go to Sheridan. If I don't, well, then I'll go skiing, and just kind of left it at that. And I got to skip my first year at Sheridan, and it ended up being a really bad ski season. So it was all meant to be, right? So nice. It was perfect timing. Yeah. As luck has it, and hard work, I guess, I got the TICAT scholarship and did get to work with them for a season. It was awesome. But as you know, with pro sports, you don't really have much control over your life during that season, and loved it. But I was like, we'll see what else goes on. All right. So I graduated from Sheridan in 2007 and headed back to the West Coast. And within days after finding out I passed my exams, I got a phone call about the women's national soccer team needing somebody. And so I was lucky enough to be able to be picked up by them right away. So my first few years out of Sheridan, worked with the women's senior team and U20 teams and in a clinic. But I'm a person who needs a lot of growth. If I don't have growth, I'm really not happy. And that's when I saw the ad in 2010 for the Vancouver Police Department. And it was for fitness coordinator at the time. And when I read the job description, I sent it immediately to my dad, because he's a retired RCMP officer. Okay. And he read it and he's like, this describes you. You're going to apply to it, right? I'm like, yeah, I have to. Like, yeah, there's stability and everything, but there's just something about it, because I really, from my upbringing with RCMP families, I have a big soft spot for police officers, and they're very much family to me, and wanted that job more than anything. And we had to go through the physical testing that applicants would have to go through. So we went down, and you had to do the 1.5 mile run in under 12 minutes. And if you didn't pass that, you didn't go on to the physical abilities test, which officers do. Then if you pass that, then you go on to the interviews. And so made it through each of those and got into the department. So was very thrilled about that.
Yeah, no doubt.
But it was all fitness based. So at that point, it was managing 2 of their gyms. It was physical testing of applicants and the specialty squads, and doing general strength and conditioning programming. But one thing that sparked my interest the day I had my interviews, we had a tour and the office had an up-down table. Mm-hmm. So right there, my brain's thinking, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I wonder if we can treat in there. And once I got it, I started putting out feelers asking about, can we treat? Because the previous people in my position were athletic therapists. There was a few more before me, but they were strength conditioning based. It wasn't actually part of the mandate. And within a month and a half, I emailed a bunch of people in HR, so the inspector and a couple of the sergeants, and I was like, can I meet with you guys to talk to you about some stuff that I can provide? So we sat down and had a coffee, and they loved the idea of on-site therapy. And they're like, brilliant. And they're like, well, how can we convince people for free treatment? And I'm like, well, let's like make a article every month about ankles and this and that to motivate them. And that's the beginning of how naive I was going in, because as soon as we said free, we were booked up right away. Right. This is fantastic, right? So it really took off, and it was a nice doorway. I was very lucky with how that just lined up, because knowing what I know now with how process happens, because we were all kind of ignorant in everything, it worked very smoothly. Sometimes if you know too much, it can cause more barriers than actually facilitate stuff. And after a few months of that is when we started doing the process of growing it. So we put in the proposal to change my position to athletic therapist, which I was just happy to have that name change, because I think it is significant for our profession to have athletic therapy actually as a label in a police department.
Absolutely.
And then it grew. And once I kind of tell the process, I'll kind of tell everything that we do. Kept growing. And then in 2015, I was looking at what my goals were, and I was in the training and recruiting unit at that time. And though I helped them out with testing and education, their strategic plan didn't really align with mine. And when I kept looking at human resources, I could see they could help facilitate the change I wanted more than the training and recruiting unit. So I put in a request for that. Anyone who's worked in a paramilitary organization, they don't know what to do with that when you ask to change spots in organizational change. So that took a little bit, and they're like, okay, well, if we move you over here, you also need a unit. So then we created the athletic therapy and wellness unit of myself, and I. So there's an ongoing joke about that for a while. And then because of my push for a lot of stuff, it got to that point where I couldn't do it all by myself anymore. And we brought on the part-time fitness coordinator, part-time physio, and kept pushing that. And then in 2019, actually, before we joined the employee wellness unit, we did have an athletic therapist join us, which unfortunately the position stopped due to COVID this year, but we evolved into the employee wellness unit. So that's kind of the route there in terms of the nitty gritty, the short.
Yeah, on it. No, it's amazing. And like a couple times, you bring up like just putting it out there and seeing what happens, but like it's almost like you've manifested everything that you've wanted to do, and then you've sort of just followed the right channels and the right paths to get there. And a common theme on a lot of these discussions when we're talking with people who are extremely passionate and driven and self-starters and willing to put in the work is pretty much that, right? Is like recognizing a position or a place where that position, place, or people will recognize your value as well. And it seems, based on like your career path, that you saw opportunity, they saw opportunity, you are expertise, they saw expertise, and you've kind of molded that nicely in the Vancouver Police Department. And that's an amazing kind of story. And you and I had talked about yesterday a little bit, and kind of the last few sessions on here have very much sort of been pointing to the idea that there's only 3 jobs when you're in school, you know, in athletic therapy, and those are pro sport, own your own clinic, or take your professor's job and sit in that same chair, you know. And you've created something. So I think the question I think that I want to lead into where you're at and exactly what you're doing and whatever rabbit hole we go into is, were you always did you always house the entrepreneurial spirit and sort of like that self-starter, or is this something that you sort of coached into yourself over time, recognizing various steps and things along the way?
I would say I've always been in that sense of thinking outside the box, seeing what else is out there. And it really comes down to how I was raised, how my parents were around me. So a phrase my mom used a lot in high school, because she was always changing professions, because my dad was RCMP, we moved a lot, was one door closes, one door opens. One door closes, one door opens. It's your job to find that door that opens. So for example, in 2008, I was with the women's national soccer team, and I was actually supposed to be going to Beijing with them. And then last minute changes, they gave my pass to somebody else. And so I let that sting for a day. And then I was like, okay, well, there's a door that opened because of this. So where is that? And that's when I actually started my previous business, Active Fit Sports Therapy. And I'm like, we can make something out of this. It's just whichever mind frame I want to use for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing, especially as an athletic therapist coming to the West Coast, where it's not commonly known, you have to create your own spot. And there's so many options, whether you do bracing, whether you focus on strength and conditioning, whether you focus on education, there's a lot of opportunities out there. And I just approached it that way when I moved out this way. It's like, I don't know which job I'm going to have because there's nothing out there, but I know there can be something out there. So I'm just going to have an open mind and start looking. And so even before I started with the department and I was in the clinic, I've worked for a fitness publishing company. So we have posters that are often in movies and stuff like that. I'm like, well, that could be a good door for me to get used to my writing. How do I write? How do I present information and go that route? So I think if you just are very open to the opportunities that are out there and not close the door on everything, amazing things can happen because of just being open-minded about stuff.
Yeah, I mean, open-minded and a lifelong learner. Like, these are things that can certainly be developed over time. If you're not them now, you start to realize as you get a little bit older that needs to continue. Otherwise, you run into complacency, or you keep running into the same wall, and you just end up very bruised and battered by it, unless you make the right and then find a door or climb over the wall or whatever we're going to do in terms of an analogy. So I think that's amazing, and I just think it's amazing to hear how far it's come. So starting out as a fitness manager and doing some testing stuff, general programming, to where you are now obviously hasn't been linear. There's probably been a few loops in the road.
Yeah, a lot of squiggles down here. I was telling somebody the other day, I'm like, I think I'm down here right now, but I know it's going to go back up again.
Right, but you are a little further along the axis, from where you started. You may be below it, but you're a little bit further along,
Still
right?
forward,
Yeah.
still forward.
Yeah, it just may not be the straightest line in the world, but no, that's but I think that's also crucial to understand, right? And like, as we identify what makes us tick, and how we can fit into certain scenarios, identifying the things that we're passionate about and driven by, and those kind of things, it doesn't have to happen right away. It can evolve over time. So like, you're out in the West Coast, you're working with a police department. What does your sort of what does your day-to-day look like? Say, for you were saying Mondays are off, but like, let's say Tuesday. What does Tuesday look like when you go into the office?
Tuesday, it can vary. So I'm split between a couple buildings. We have treatment rooms at 2 different ones, and then we have 3 buildings we work out of. Tuesdays right now on average, and I'll go back to pre-COVID in a minute.
Yeah.
So I think I'm treating 4 or 5 people between sworn and civilians. I'm not sure on the mix that day. And we've been approved to start POPAT testing so that's a police officer's physical abilities test,
Mm-hmm.
for our members for half increments. So they can it's like continuing ed for them. So we just got approved to start for that. So I have to head over to our Main Street building to take some members through on that. And then Tuesday nights are when we hold practice sessions for VPD applicants. So people who have applied to the police department, we provide as much support as possible to help them through the physical aspect of the test.
Mhm.
So when we test them in on practice sessions, what I tell them is, you're the brawn, I'm the brain. I can do everything for you, but run the test. I can talk to you, I can coach you, but you have to do it. And it's great because you'll have people who have never played a sport or worked out in their life to pro football. We will have everything in between. So you never know which language you're going to need to use, what you're going to be working with. So you'll have some people who are very knowledgeable in movement, and some who really don't know their right arm from their left, or that they're jumping up and down versus going forward, right? So it's quite interesting.
Yeah.
And I love it because I know this is where we can have such a strong impact. These people are working hard to try and achieve their dream, and I love having that role in helping someone get their dream. So when I get to see them sworn in at the end, there are definitely swearing in sessions where I do shed tears, because it's been a long process for some, and they've worked so hard to get it. So that's
Yeah.
a typical Tuesday.
Yeah, no, and not so typical in my world, but and a very like an amazing sort of insight into what this can all be, so for there are quite a few current students or recent grads, or even for myself, sort of venturing into this world of entrepreneurial, sort of like following passion and intuition a little bit more than logic and these other things. And so you talk about like a varied environment, which I think is crucial, because you're not just in the mundane kind of just falling into the same rhythm every day, and then delivering messaging and education to people is massive, right? Like for me, in listening to you, your job on the daily is providing people with what they need to be successful, but not to the point that they're dependent on you, right? Like you're cutting the cord and saying like, I'll give you the tools, but you need to figure out how to use them, down the road, or help you use them. Is that a fair statement? And within the police department, is that well received, like that way of going about things?
Absolutely. They're like, police departments are full of A-type personalities. They're very much just give me the tools and I'll go do it.
Yeah.
And some, depending on what they're going through, and I just say that because there's so much complexity to officers, where they may be that A-type personality, but if they're struggling with something else, then they need more help, and then we'll adjust accordingly depending on their situation.
Yep.
So say if we're working with them for rehabbing from quite a serious injury that involved quite a bit of trauma, it's just getting in. Like, if I can just get you into the office, I don't care if we talk or if we work out or if we do some soft tissue stuff, then there's times to help them more, and then there's times to, okay, now it's time for you to go float off on your own, and make sure that they have that education and knowledge to be able to be self-sufficient as well.
Yeah, and in the sort of paramilitary, I think you coined it, or like the tactical workforce. What an amazing, what an amazing profession to have on board. Like, as an athletic therapist, these are athletes. These are human beings who are moving on a regular basis. They're carrying, street beat officers are carrying weapons and carrying loads and vests and sitting for long periods of time and then doing active things. Like this is an athlete. I just see like a baseball player in a police officer's uniform. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
With the, like we had talked about, with the life-threatening daily kind of stress on top of that. So like a whole lot different, but not the same. So there's a huge role there. And in listening to you speak, you had some overlap with Victoria Cleary, who's in Petawawa, and she does a lot of the stuff with the military there. And I think it's amazing, like two powerful women who are just so driven and passionate and intelligent, employing the empowerment angle, right? Like, this is it. And this is where such headway can be made. So within the tactical space, how many people do you know are sort of in that space as ATs? Like, I think you and I you mentioned you might be the only one in Canada that houses the role you do.
Yeah. In Canada, working directly like as an employee for police, I'm the only one I know of. I'm hoping that maybe somebody will hear this and be like, oh, I do too, right? There are places for strength and conditioning coaches. That's more common. So with RCMP, I know Edmonton has it, Calgary has it, where that's your foot in the door, just like my foot was in the door. There are athletic trainers down in the US, and they're making some good headway down there. So back in 2012, I was at a tactical strength and conditioning conference, and someone stood up and they asked, "Have you ever heard of therapy and policing?" And I raised my hand, and I was the only one, and had a lineup of people asking questions afterwards. And we've been able to find more people come around since. So Fairfax County, Nancy Burke really launched it in the States down there back in about 2006 or 7.
Yeah.
And she's since retired, but she is really still pushing the development in the area. And Anna has taken over for Fairfax. Sydney, Ohio has it. Denver is PT, but they have the on-site therapy. Where is Tracy out of? I want to say Point Roberts, Point Stevens in Wisconsin. So it is growing and growing in police and military, but more so down there.
Mm-hmm.
And actually I've messaged Victoria being like, hey, we should start a Canada like tactical AT group, because there's more of us. I know of some who are trying to get into fire, and it's a no-brainer to me in terms of how much of an impact we can have. Just to give you an idea on it, I really think ATs are the multi-tool, kind of like the Swiss Army knife of what can be offered in these organizations. Simply, like, so the way I break down what we do in our department is we have our injury prevention and rehabilitation, if we think of that as one bubble. Mm-hmm. And we do concussion baseline testing, we do FMS, we do education, we have treatment rooms, we have modalities, we do manual therapy, active rehab, reconditioning, all in that zone. Then in our strength and conditioning bubble, we do the physical testing of applicants, of our specialty squads, just for increments, so they're fit tests for members to get their continuing ed. I manage 4 gyms across our city, and we do renos. So I think I've done 5 gym renos so far, and all the upkeep from that, as well as strength and conditioning programs, right?
Yeah.
We have that, and group fitness and group yoga. And then in our other bubble, we have wellness, which we have a little bit of overlap with our unit now. And that's so many different things. And that's where I think a lot of people don't realize just our basic wellness education, but where there can be so much growth. So for example, the average age of our members are in their 40s. So a lot of them are starting to have to consider how to care for aging parents, and how do they navigate private homes versus public homes. So we bring in people to talk about that. We had a whole series on menopause. We bring in every single aspect that we can think of in terms of how might our officers' wellness be impacted. So those are kind of the 3 ways I like to break down our unit. And that's why I put in all my training, because I use all my degrees for sure, all the time. Every day I use everything I've learned.
No, it's amazing. And it's funny you bring up a couple of those points. I mean, the first one is massive. And I think just to reiterate it, just because it's not there or it's not there regularly doesn't mean it won't be in terms of this profession. So you knock on enough doors or keep going until that door opens, or kick the door freaking open, you can create it, right? And so the skill set is there. The ability to work with, one of the things that I constantly reiterate to people is you work with humans, which means you can do that anywhere. You find an area that you want to work in, you can do that. And so then it's finding the right people to have the conversation with, finding the people that see value in you and what you do. And then secondarily, you bring up the Swiss Army knife. And I actually use that line like today, like a couple hours ago. I was talking to a CFL athlete, and he's like, so what kind of therapist are you? I was like, you know what a Swiss Army knife is? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, okay, that's the kind of therapist I am. You know what I mean? Whatever you need, we can make it work. We can make it happen. We can program. We can cater to whatever injuries you've had. We can cater to, any kind of these things. And I think, I see the football athlete or the baseball athlete or the hockey athlete on a regular basis. Your athletes are coming in on a different level, right? And you talked about the wellness component. You talked about therapy and S&C, and you're starting to blend these all together very nicely. The physical component obviously has direct ties to the mental health and trauma and all of these other things. And so maybe you can speak to that in terms of not specifics necessarily, but how you intertwine those. I know you mentioned there are mentors and there are a bunch of programs in place within your department for people to have outlets and inlets even.
Yeah. So in terms of the direct support, we do have our peer support.
Yep.
And the officer that manages that is in my unit. And so it's quite a number of, and I don't know the exact number, I think it's close to 30, maybe I could be completely off, of officers who are trained in peer support. And so they can be contacted for somebody's going through anything, and it can be anything. And it's especially in policing, and this is one thing that I really want to get out to ATs, is there is a significant culture in policing.
Mhm.
And if you don't understand it, and if you're not accepted into it, you will not have an impact whatsoever, because they will not listen to you. And so that brings a whole other level into it. And so the peer support is significant in police departments, because they need somebody who understands organizational stress, and they need somebody who understands critical incident stress. And I can't even say I fully understand it, because I only get exposed to the organizational stress. And it's so significant in the sense that there's studies that show there is more actual psychological injury to officers from organizational stress than critical incidents. And so critical incidents is that shootings, that's coming across fatalities, all that, because of that slow, constant hit at you with
Mhm.
stuff.
Right.
And so they really need somebody who understands that, which we can, but I'm never going to claim I understand where my officers come from, but I'll try and be supportive. But then trust is a huge factor. And that actually came up in my master's study as well, is as soon as the person is accepted and trusted into the family, then they'll listen to do anything for you. Like, my officers are phenomenal. The amount of things they've done for me, like I get the warm fuzzies almost on a daily basis from them. And you can have a huge impact, but it takes time to get in there. And if you go in assuming, okay, well, my knowledge will be enough for them to listen to, you're going to set yourself up for failure. So it's going in, being open, listening to them, and really nurturing that trust aspect, like we would with athletes, but it's just that little bit of an extra level.
Mhm.
And then it just opens up a lot of doors at that point.
Yeah.
So so that's part of that mental health aspect, is just even starting that trust connection. And one of the best ways I have found that is they can see BS right through everything, right? Like, they can tell if you're lying or being fake. Is so taking that step and being vulnerable with your experiences, if they're asking, right? They don't want it shoved on them, but if they're asking stuff, putting it out there, they will open up. But you have to go there first, I find. And I found that's been a very helpful route. So I've had to take stress leave a few times from work, and it's always hard, because you feel like, why can't I cut it? Why this? Why that? When really I'm taking care of myself, and who am I to push wellness if I'm not willing to actually go in that and take that step and be like, okay, yeah, I need a timeout. This is way too much,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And then you go
Absolutely.
back to work, and they look at you like, where were you? And you're like, okay, okay, here we go, right? But they're actually really receptive to it. And I find that's made a lot more forward steps, because they start to see you even more as a safe person. And we're like, well, they understand. I can talk to them. And so back in 2013, I had a whole bunch of things going on, between training for ultras, working on committees. I was a strength coach for some Special Olympic athletes, running a program with that, and called off an engagement. So a whole bunch of stuff. And I went from running ultras to barely being able to climb stairs over a weekend. And even thinking was brutal. And so I'll have some members come in who are stressed. And I'm like, yeah, I've been at that point where I'll look at my email and I don't even know how to open it. And then I have to figure that out. And when they see that, they're like, wait, that's what I'm going through right now. Okay, well, let's have a conversation on this.
Yep.
So that's kind of my approach to the mental health. And if we're doing stuff in the gym or something physical, it makes it a little bit easier to come out as well, right? Versus just sitting down with a face to face.
Yeah, that's sweat equity makes it a little bit, it helps build that trust, right? Like, you're alongside them, they know what you know what you're talking about, they know that you're living it, you're training, you're doing the things that you're teaching and preaching. You're not just sort of a headpiece for it, or a talking head for all the things that you need to be doing, which you also bring up, like that wellness piece, and like having to go back and like take care of yourself. I think that is absolutely the critical point that that COVID and the pandemic has shaken the tree for a lot of people, and myself included. We were living abroad and coming back, and one of the things that I learned while I was away was that, like, I didn't even know that I needed self-care, and I was lucky enough to have some opportunities and do some things. And to the point now is I'm offering my services as a therapist, a yoga practitioner, a yoga instructor, a strength conditioning specialist for weekend retreats for therapists, you know, for people who take care of other people, because the constant draw of taking care of other people, we sometimes do. We neglect the one person that needs to be taken care of first. So I think that's absolutely massive, and I think that's critical. And to have people see that definitely begins with that trust factor. And I hosted this past week, we hosted a mental health and addiction in sports seminar, and we had a counseling psychologist on who I actually had been at high school with. And anyway, we'd come back around and reconnected, and his big thing was trust. And like the easiest way to earn trust is to be, in his language was like, be fucking human, like just listen, because communication is innately nonverbal. You know what I mean? Like we can communicate without talking. So if we're just listening, we are automatically building trust. But we need to listen, you know, openly and not judgmentally and all these other things. And at the same time, in the same light, you start to create the networks of people who are experts in those areas and start to bring them in and refer onwards, obviously, as a therapist, right? So you obviously have those channels and people to refer to. And I think that's massive for all of us, is to build networks as we go along. And that's part of this platform, is to give access to other people who are in the field doing things like you're doing. It's absolutely fascinating, the things that you're doing. And I applaud you. And I thank you again for being on here and taking some time tonight. And again, this is session 44 of First Star Let's Chat with Becky Swan, who works with the Vancouver Police Department. No, it's amazing. And so you talk about those things and the Swiss Army knife, and like, I just want to go down every single rabbit hole that we've touched on so far. The tactical thing, like what are some of the sort of standard injuries that you'll come across with your street beat officers? Or is there sort of standard? It depends on the individual. It depends on what they're doing. It depends on how long they've been in service. It's very much like athletes, right? It's individualized, but are there some common trends or themes?
And like athletes will kind of go through those phases where like, wow, there's a lot of shoulders right now, right? Like this is the current injury aspect. But with it, definitely there's a lot of hips, but hips can be so varied, right? When we get down to it, it's pelvic stability, but it may show as, okay, I have a little bit more of an issue around my knee or my lower back. But I see a lot of officers who have trouble stabilizing their pelvis when they're walking, right? Walking may be fine, but you throw on 25 pounds of gear or more, and then potentially have them run, then their chain just goes crazy, right? So they start having feet issues, knee issues, back issues, all of that. So there's a lot of compression in the hips and a lot of lack of stability. So one thing I find with the longer members on is they really start to lose that internal hip range of motion. So I have some members I can't even get to neutral. That's as close as I can get to internal hip range of motion. So trying to get that, and it's part from the compression from their gear, part a lot are big guys, small cars, they're sitting externally rotated in their hips for 10 hours. They're going to start having some issues with that. But yeah, their hips don't have that movement, and then that lateral stability, because also depending on their background in the gym, they do a lot of front back aspects and they don't do enough lateral movement, enough lateral stability. And if they do it in one plane, and I'm like, no, let's change your hip range of motion. So if I'm doing a workshop with our recruits or with our mountain bike unit and stuff like that, it's showing them how to self-assess hip mobility, as well as how they can start working on those ranges. And I try and create buy-in by showing them how it applies to their job, but then also to show that no matter who you're at, we can find a weakness. So I'll usually pick on the biggest, strongest guy and call them out and try some stuff, right? But it's not to be mean, and they're always good about it. It's let's have fun with it. It's not a bad thing that we have this weakness. So that's going against a little bit of their culture of hide weakness. It's play around with it, have fun, let's laugh, let's see what we can and cannot do. So with the hips, and then a lot of compression in the thoracic spine from the vest. It's not terribly heavy, but we start to get that creep after 10-hour shifts, 4 days in a row, year after year. And we see a big change in the functional movement screen from new recruits to about 10 years on. I'd say between that 7 to 10 years where they have more of that compression. So that leads to neck issues, a lot of shoulder issues where they can't act or like move their scapula while on their their back. So then they're overusing their GH joint and stuff like that. So that's where I do focus a lot with them as well. And then that goes into, okay, well, let's go have fun and see them in action, right? So I will try and get out and do research as much as possible. And I do this because it's more fun than anything. So
Right.
I've been on the horses. I've been bitten by the dogs. I've been dressed up in their gear. We go to the gun range. I'll watch them shoot. I'll get out there as much as I can to actually see, okay, well, this is what I have in my mind, but let me see you do it. And then, okay, what can I try on that? And that kind of goes into why I go to clinics and gyms to reach out, is they can have that mind too. We all have that eye on how we like to watch biomechanics, but until we get into the vest and the belt, we actually don't know what it's like. And that's still just a smidgen of it. So our tactical training center has been great, and they've given me a bunch of belts and vests. So all role playing stuff, so no live rounds or anything like that. But first thing I do is get people to try and tie up their shoe. And that usually is, they're like, oh, I'm like, well, get down on the ground and try and get up. And that's usually when the wormhole starts, and they're like, okay, I can see all the issues and how I can use my expertise and my eyes to help treat them.
I love it. It's fantastic to hear you say that, because I think, we learn about it in sport, but we could apply this anywhere. Like, go and sit with an office worker on a daily basis and see, and start to understand that leverage to get up and out of a chair every day, or having a chair on wheels, or, that anterior hip, you call it creep with the vest, like anterior, like closing down the anterior chain, right? In males, when the ass leaves and it falls into the belly, that's problematic, right? So we need to build the ass, and we need to build the ass in more than one plane. So you talked about training single plane and sort of convincing, but you're doing exactly what your mother advised you to do. You're showing them the open door, right? Like, let's close, like you can keep doing the single planar stuff, but it's gotten you to the point that you're at right now. So keep doing it. We're not trying to take that away, but we can supplement that with frontal plane or transverse plane movement, or like multi-segmental joint stuff, and all kinds of stuff, and dissociative or associative movement that you've touched on already, with the pelvis and sort of like the thoracic spine. So I think it's fantastic. And just hearing you speak about like trying the vest on and actually living, like actually doing the stuff, because that is crucial to making decisions and to helping people. You want to build trust, do these things. This is not eyewash. We just call them baseballs. Like, it's eyewash. It's just something to do. It's not really doing anything. But like, this is actual, like, you're there and you're having fun with it. Like, I can feel it. Everybody who's here tonight and picking this up can feel that you're having fun with your job. It's hard work, obviously, and lots of different channels and avenues and rabbit holes and all kinds of other things. But you love what you do, and I'm sure the people around you feel that on a daily basis. And it's an honor to have you on and to hear you speak again, because there's more out there, right, for AT, and you and I had touched on it and talked about it, but looking at like gear modification. So back in the day, we used to have to like modify a tape job, right? Like, understand anatomical boundaries and these other things for an ankle tape job, or this piece of tape needs to do this, or whatever that might be. Does gear modification, and the reason I bring this up is because Victoria touched on it, and she's modifying gear on a regular, and I love that, like, this is similar trains of thought, and she's bringing people in, and she's saying, like, don't just come for treatment, like, bring your stuff in, because I need to see it. And I'm sure you're the same way. You're in these buildings doing this stuff. But is that something that you've sort of had to discuss either on the ground level with officers, or like taking it higher up to say, like, maybe there's a better way to do some of this equipment that we're using? Or is that kind of not quite there yet?
No, definitely a lot of conversations on it, to the point where I've joined our health and safety committee as an alternate, just so, because I get contacted about questions with the gear, and they're enrolled in that, and as well as our uniform committee,
Yeah.
just so we can keep that conversation going, because we have their belt and vest. And so the vest is your standard one with a ballistic plate in it. So then they have protection for stabbing and for certain rounds for ammunition. Mm-hmm. And then on their belt, they have a certain amount that they have to have on there. They don't have to have everything on there, which is good, because some people, we say, have smaller real estate. So if you have a small waist circumference, you don't have much real estate. If You're quite large in the abdomen, you have lots of real estate. So you have a little bit more options, right? Mm-hmm. And more is not always better. So that's good balance of they have enough to keep themselves safe, but not too much to make themselves unsafe, right? So there's that balance there. And so stuff that we can do with standard issue is there is a pad. It's like a lumbar support that they could put on the back to help disperse the weight.
Yeah.
Which works okay, but it does make the belt shift a lot more because it's not as strapped onto the internal belt as much. So for anyone who's not aware on how the gear is worn, they have an internal belt that goes through their belt loops. And then they put their belt on top of that and they're Velcro and they stick together. And then every about 6 inches or so, they have belt secures that they're little straps that go around to secure them together, right? And so you want that belt as stable as possible. When you have that lumbar support in the back, you have a space about this big there where there's no support, so you can have more shifting in the belt in the back there, which isn't great, but it helps. Other options are suspenders, so there'll be loops around that internal belt and go up, but then that also comes with issues because they have to be under the shirt, so it's more complicated to get on. Because if it's external, that can be a choking hazard. So we have to look at what can be at risk that way for officers. But then also what it looks like. So a big debate in law enforcement now is internal vests, which you can't see, or the external carriers, right? So the external carriers outside. Now, the external carriers look scarier. So there's a lot of pushback for that because of optics. And then and I'm not a force options person, so this is just what I've learned through our officers and everything is, okay, well, there's a little bit more to grab onto if it's there. Right. But everybody will debate both sides on that. So there is that option of internal, external. So right now, our department really only allows internal unless you're a specialty squad. So right now, it's mostly the suspenders and the lumbar support. And they've come out with these new, they call them anti-gravity plates that go on the iliac crest on each side. So they put it right behind the ASIS to deload a little bit, and some members like that. And you can get those at our stores unit where you can buy pieces. Now there's other options that members can do, and especially if they're new on the job, I encourage them to spend the $200 or $300 for it. Is they have a belt, which is actually a thicker gel, more like a memory gel, and it has grip on it, so it's a lot more comfortable. There's not as much compression injuries on the nerves around the ASIS, which is really good, and it just disperses the force of that weight a lot more, which helps, but they have to pay out of pocket for it. But if you have 30 years ahead of you, to me, I'm like, it's worth it versus everything that will go on. And so those are what the main ones we have. And so with the debate, and this is a rabbit hole, is if we go to the external carriers where they can put more stuff on their vest, right now the research says there's less lower back pain. Great, okay. But would I want to put that on somebody who has a neck issue or a shoulder issue, or they don't breathe properly? Now I'm loading extra weight onto the thoracic spine and their rib cage. Is that a better case scenario? So in a perfect world, I'd say we could fit a member according to their movements, maybe do a functional movement screen before and after and see what they perform better with. Because if they perform better, to me, that's safer. We're a ways away from that, but that's kind of some conversations that I've had out there. But also because of the organizational structure, it's not just what's best for them, it's what does it look like, right? Is it approved by the uniform committee, by our tactical training and all the different process? And then also muscle memory. If we move some of their maybe less lethal options to a new place, how many reps do they have to do to make sure they can safely grab it in that critical situation where they have a second to grab, right? So it's complex.
Yeah, 100%. And so many things to think about and you know, and but this goes a long way within the athletic space as well, because there are ample opportunities when we're standing around on sidelines with athletes, right? Where we could have equipment and start to understand this, like football and cantilever pads versus uncantilever pads, different types of helmets, different setups for face guards and shields and all kinds of things in every sport. And so you talk about it on such an informed level that I hope, and I'm sure it does, but it inspires people to understand that much more, because again, that builds the trust factor. That builds I know when she walks in, what a good day feels like, what a bad day feels like, what a handshake looks like, or how that equipment feels for them. You can start to empathize maybe a little bit more. I also love the fact that there is no, I think I'm speaking for you, or I'm summarizing what you said, but there is no one size fits all, right? We have to take the individual into account, and orthotics don't solve everything, unfortunately. So that's a thing that's out there as well. So, you know, modifying equipment, modifying what your screen looks like to suit the individuals that you're working with. I think all of this stuff is amazing. We're already pushing close to an hour, and it feels like it's been 13 minutes maximum. So I'll open this up for anybody to start thinking on questions. If there is anything specifically for Becky, again, please feel free to type that into the chat box and I'll relay it over to her. If you'd rather unmute yourself, we're okay with that as well. But preferably just type it in, and then we can get to any and all that come in that way. Again, this is First Star Let's Chat session 44 with Becky Swan. Membership is available for First Star Let's Chat for athletic therapists. It's $10 a month. It gets you 0.4 CEUs weekly for the quizzes to be basically populated for you at the end of these sessions. So those are available ongoing. They backdate to August. You can collect CEUs as often or as rarely as you want with membership. Becky, this is amazing. And so you also have this side little piece with Blue Line Vitality, right? Where you are generating understanding of wellness, right? And so is that kind of the main impetus of what you're doing with that? Sort of speak to that little project. And again, I think it's at Blue Line Vitality, right, on Instagram? Yeah, so follow that one. There's some great stuff there. I know it's starting out, and I'm following it, and great posts already, and some great pieces. So jump in.
Yeah, figuring out Instagram
post. Yeah. It's a hard thing.
Versus like, look, and I'm on a hike.
People care about that stuff, though.
It's true. Well, with it's not just for myself. Like, my why is officer wellness, right? And yes, my officers and my civilians at my department are there, but there's this huge movement in officer wellness in general, worldwide, North America, and we see big changes at the chief level. So I spoke at the International Association of Chiefs of Police Wellness Symposium in February, presenting on my research findings. And you hear chiefs talk about how they have to be vulnerable with their officers, and you hear their push. And that just shows such a significant shift in culture in policing. So, you know, okay, there's this tremendous change going on. And we see it a little bit more from the bottom. There's some clogs in the middle, depending on where people are, but it's a huge forward momentum right now, and we're just kind of like on that tip of that tidal wave of everything changing. So even in the past 2 years, I've seen it change from, okay, well, we have our physical wellness, our mental wellness, emotional, and now just in the past year, you see, okay, on top of that, you have your spiritual, you have your family wellness, your financial wellness, your sleep, your fatigue management, your cardiac, all these different aspects that really can impact wellness as a whole. So they're really starting to dig down more into that rabbit hole of what else can impact our officers. Even so much, I look at, okay, well, if we have a brand new officer who's 20 years old, he's going to have different issues than a brand new officer who's 40 years old, right? We're going to have different things that we have to help an officer with a new baby versus a 17-year-old, right? And so it's super, super complex, and you see all these people pushing for that development, but we just can't do it on our own. So part of Blue Line Vitality is just to try and spark people's interest, but there's so many awesome wellness professionals out there, and that's been a big part of my position at VPD is we have over 2,000 people. We can't do it on our own. So it's creating those networks and referring out and finding people who are interested in it and have some knowledge, and trying to disperse it as much, because it's going to be a group effort to actually make this big change. And so I try my part in terms of, if somebody contacts me and they're interested in working with policing, 100% I will meet with you. Sometimes we have to play back and forth, but I will always say yes. And if I can get you in for testing or get you into gear, wherever I can, I will help where I can, because then that means there's another person I can send my officers to, right? So it's just creating more awareness and education, so there's more people to help officers. And right now, especially, there's so much being taken away from them that I just want to give them more, because when you see and hear everything that they sacrifice to protect us, it's pretty inspiring. So it's the least I feel I can do to help add to it.
Absolutely, well said, and I think there is so much more to that that we could get into for another 2 hours probably. You have somebody here. I'll be reaching out. I have some ideas just in speaking with you yesterday and speaking with you today. I love Vancouver. I love Vancouver probably in the middle of February in Ontario. So we can be
Come
in.
do that at our retreat out this way. Come
Yeah, yeah, that's the plan. So we'll talk on that, and I hope we can connect and make something happen. That'd be fantastic. If nothing more, a good solid conversation. Again, if anybody has any questions, it's Becky Swan, session 44, First Star Let's Chat this evening. I'll just drop November's guests while we're here, and then if there are any questions, I'll come back around to those. So not to take away from this evening, but we're moving into November. Next week will be Jamie Livingston of Reconditioning HQ. The following week will be Paul Papotsakis, who is with the National Ballet of Canada. The 15th of November will be Dan Chamas, who's with Montreal Alouettes. And then the next week following that, will not be on a Sunday. It'll be a Monday afternoon because we had to coordinate schedules with Tim Contos, who's the Associate Athletic Director of Sports Medicine at Virginia Commonwealth University. And then the last Sunday of November will be Dr. Lorianne Hines, who's at York University. Next week, we'll go at 8:15 Eastern Time instead of 7:45 for those of you joining us live. But again, all of these will be made available for archive via podcast and YouTube channel. This has been amazing, and I can't thank you enough, because I am writing, I don't know, I guess I'm in the habit of just quoting how many pages of notes that I've written, but I think we're up to at least 5.5 pages of notes, and I have to somehow find all these lines and circle and draw them all back together, because there's so much here, and I'm sure there are plenty of people who are going to reach out to you after this as well. An influencer in the field for sure, somebody who's doing the things that a lot of us dream of doing, and that's following passion, that's leading by education, that's leading, silently, but also with a solid background and understanding in what it is you're doing and with your why. And I think that's massive, and I absolutely adore what you're doing, and I can't speak to it enough. So Becky Swan, thank you so much for this evening. I don't see much coming in terms of questions, but I'm sure there will be afterwards for people who are going to write you probably pages and pages of emails to try and check in and see how you've done all you're doing, how you've gotten there, what you continue to do. And the Vancouver Police Department is absolutely lucky to have somebody like you, and I am so proud to be an athletic therapist alongside you, and to have a police department like that be willing to be open enough and understand what it is that we do, so that you can showcase that for all of the officers that do so much for all of us. So this has been amazing. And if there are opportunities, and listen, one more thing, because I think we talked about something last night. There was an organization that you mentioned yesterday that has membership. Yeah. And yeah, if you want to just touch on that one quickly.
So any AT or strength coach who is wanting to get into the tactical realm, there are a lot more people like me who are just eager to help and get more people in these areas. And there's 2 areas. There's the Tactical Strength and Conditioning branch of the National Strength and Conditioning Association. They have a phenomenal conference every year, and they have a certification that I'm writing right now. And I'm not writing, I'm going to be doing the test on, and huge network there. And they cover police, military, and fire. So phenomenal mix of strength coaches and therapists. And then there's the Public Safety Athletic Trainers Association in the States. It was created by Nancy Burke, and it is full of athletic trainers down the States who work military, fire, and are making a lot of headway down in the States. I think membership, last I checked, was $11. It's really, really cheap. But there's so many resources there. Both of them have Facebook pages. Jump on them. Just ask questions. So many people respond right away. It's phenomenal, including the top researchers in the area. So check those out.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. I just wanted to get that in because you mentioned it yesterday, and I didn't have my notebook in front of me when you wrote it down. So then we'll just circle back around for it selfishly for me, but for everybody else as well. And I think we might have just created like a massive following and membership for you as well, because there's a whole bunch of thank yous coming in here, and in terms of people who are going to reach out to you. So hopefully I didn't overload your plate too much, or we don't overload your plate too much. But this is where it starts, right? Sharing is caring, and having these conversations and opening the door is an amazing theme. And I'll thank you again. I'll hit stop here on record in 1 second after I get through this final thank you. And then anybody who's willing to stick around, I'll hang around for 5 or so minutes, 10 minutes afterwards for our after hours. And again, this has been First Star Let's Chat, session 44 with Becky Swan. Becky, thank you so much to everybody who joined us this evening. Thank you so much for being here live. Those of you picking up the podcast, the YouTube channel, the support is absolutely flooring. And I'm so proud to be a part of this integrative space and building things in the performance space for through conversations like these. Just absolutely amazing. And I look forward to speaking with you again soon. As always, brought to you by Mobility Tape, the only heat activated kinesiology tape on the market. First Star Let's Chat, session 44. Good night. Thanks again for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of this community. Check us out online, firststartherapy.com. That's FIRSTAR therapy.com. Or email us with feedback, consult@firststartherapy.com. CONSULT@firststartherapy.com. On Instagram @firststar.therapy, and our podcast host @letschat.at. This is First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast.